Blessed love and peace. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah Akbar. 道可道非常道明可明非常明 Já Rastafari. Deus noster que é sincere santo fakita no mentu. Vaheguru Satnam. Baruch Ata Elohim Eloheinu melech haolam shehekol nihya b'divaru. Amen. Kyrie eleison, Savamastu Savajagatehe Sabe Sata Bhavantu Sukhitata. Vagabia. Aquaba upendo na amane. Fakiri neselami. Chinta dan per me, libov me umejega. Ubuntu Shubona Fakitka. Session. Kamosanira. Domo Arigato. Pilama Yellow Walk and Talk Doka Shengun. Governor God. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata Jamia Yatafanami. Baru. Aho. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Jumping into further of this unfavorable holding pattern of behavior. Late night, waking up, madrugada, it's 10 to 3, middle of the night. Oh, puffy. Junk food. The table is junky that I'm looking at. Unnecessary to have the headphones on. That new toy phenomena, also seemingly further covert in terms of doing things in the middle of the night. So here it is. We got what we got to share. Processing, self-psychoanalysis of collective selves as well. To be well. Here we go. Few things. One that is recently posted. Democracy and institutions are feminist expressions of polygyny. Yes or no? We say yes. Uno cosa. Cosa numero dos. Can a mixed heritage man, can a mixed heritage son truly find sanctuary within his earthly more? Who shares a different earthly nature? And, for that matter, can any multicultural son, any son of any homogeneousness or heterogeneousness, can any multicultural son truly find sanctuary within any more homogeneous or heterogeneous? We say yes. Yet it involves some serious reconciliation. Key word here is transcendence. Third joint goes back to the first joint. Essentially, relationship between man and woman and the nature of piety. And, God willing, we get to it and recollection serves. Then, reverting back to contemporary conventional politics, geo-like. So, Those are cuatro cosas. Um, so now we endeavor to complete the unpacking. First joint, democracy and institutions are feminist expressions of polygyny. What we mean by that? So this pertains to the nature of relationship between man and woman, particularly recognizing this in the traditional sense of man and woman. Now, as a pretense of it, we're going to have sleep in the eye, and this is going to be a periodic thing we can anticipate. So please, patience with the whatever that is, bothersomeness that starts with a P. Water. Egeno enemy. Felakuti. Talk with brethren yesterday. Where you from? Abuja? No. Lagos? No. Abidjan? No. Further, you're getting colder. Oh, I'm way off, huh? Okay. IT? Oh, you're way off now. Where are you from? Cameroon. Ah. Salut. Continuing on. Roger Mila. Samueleto. Anyway. Man and woman. Traditional, primordial. So as some of like the premise, or not the premise, but the preface for this joint. Again, we're going to review some basic things we shared before in terms of the nature of man and the nature of woman and the nature of the relationship between man and woman. Recognizing, generally speaking, man has a physical strength compared to woman. And in that yin and yang, woman has a comparative mental strength over man. A significant portion of the intimacy and the nature of the loyalty that man provides and shares with woman is the physical, sexual intimacy. Particularly where he invests his seed. But within that also, again, touch and knowledge, that type of interaction. Investing it within the woman that he is committed to for life. And whenever a man strays from that and shares his physical intimacy, his seed, his knowledge with other women, and when I'm speaking of knowledge, particularly, it means like any knowledge, but particularly that proverbial knowledge of like to know, to touch, to feel, to be intimate with someone, to know someone thoroughly, to share that type of intimacy and knowledge and experience with someone physically. But knowledge is like levels and layers. So when a man shares that experience with another woman, that dilutes the experience that he has with his wife. And it brings in, not even just invites, but it brings in to the relationship that he has with his wife all different types of additional elements that very often cause static, insecurity, fear, anger, jealousy, greed, hatred, delusion, and further, which is why it is beneficial for him to concentrate exclusively in his knowledge and relationship with his wife. That's the physical intimacy. And sexual intimacy, definitely, but even physical intimacy, touching, hugging. Otherwise, that's why many traditional men from many religious traditions don't even touch a woman who's not from his family. Because when a man is retaining his life force, his seed, and he experiences that potency and knows like how strong even just a touch is. Jesus walks about through the crowds. Who just touched me? What you talking about? Everybody's around, they're pressing around. You show me who touched you. Oh, it was the woman with the flow of blood. He could feel the energy taken from him just by the woman touching him. That's when a man is on his deen and knows his power. So that's how sacred and strong that is. And when a man just shares that with his wife, blessings upon blessings. And when he dilutes it with other women, treacherousness, the nest of treacher. So that's on the man's side. That's from the man's experience. Now, it's different with a woman. Yes, it's the same in terms of physical intimacy and her only sharing that with her husband. But the way in which the woman, a way in which a woman is significantly intimate and invests herself within a man is even beyond the physical. And it is the mental, again, because that's her strength. Man's strength is physical, primarily in that context. Woman's strength is mental. And so, beyond just how she, obviously being modest and chaste and only having physical intimacy with her husband, but even beyond that, it's where she invests her mind. Not just her mind, but her loyalty. Who she listens to, who she abides by. So here's the thing, I gotta work on this one. Articulating this. All right, a woman, a wife, abides by the authority of her husband and obeys within the authority of her husband. So what does that mean? I'm doing my best to articulate this approximation. When I say abides within, meaning she works, she lives, she cooperates within the authority of her husband and obeys. Doesn't necessarily mean she obeys him directly and exclusively and unquestioningly, but she obeys within his authority, obeys within. Not to, within. And as I mentioned before, when a man is living a purpose and a law that's greater than himself, that is the nature of the authority that he is practicing, that he wields, that he shares. Because it's not his own doing. It's not his own ideas. Also, 3 a.m. We're doing a count to see how soon we get the flashing lights. The red and blue flashing lights. And that's not a dig on police. It's a matter of recognizing what the conditions are, because when one lives in an experience where there's a positive relationship with police and one is on a spiritual path, it is easier for one to see that when police are doing things, these are that is a cosmic expression of the conditions of that man. What I mean by that, like, they're static, and the police are like cosmic forces that are responding to that static amidst the man that he may not have an earthly knowledge of, but that are part of his spirit being. And so it's like a symbolism, particularly when it's late at night, this, that, and the other. It's a symbolism of like responses to things that are going on in his life, literally at that moment, with whatever the temporal conditions are, but existentially within his life at that moment, amidst all the relations that he maintains in life. So that's when a man has a positive, is directly cognizant of a positive relationship with the police that patrol the vicinity that he lives in. When they're static, when a man is without that type of recognition of a positive relationship, then there's different things going on. But anyways, that's just for people's reference. For people who don't have that experience of a positive relation with police, to remember what that is, because we all come from some type of positive relationship with the authority that governs the land around us. So it's a matter of remembering that and then working to cultivate that, because the conditions where people don't experience that at that moment, positive relationship with police and authority figures, it's a matter of recognizing how chaotic conditions are, and it's not any malevolence on the part of the police, and well, it's not any exclusive and absolute malevolence on the part of the police or even the governing figures, politicians, or even Illuminati or otherwise. Again, it's the primordial cosmic conditions. So if whatever angst people are experiencing amidst those conditions, it's a matter like, we got to cultivate that deen, that peace, that stillness, that equilibrium within ourselves, so that at the very least we attune ourselves with the formal authority figures. Interestingly yellow. So anyways, that's what we got going. That's what we got going on literally at the moment. Continue back onto the program. Man and woman. So a woman, we're talking about abiding within the authority of a man and abiding to the authority of a man. How am I saying? You see words. Abiding within and obeying within. I might have said abiding to before, but this is the crux of what I'm saying. When a man lives by a law and a rule and a purpose greater than himself, a woman shares within that. And so when she's obeying that, and that's the nature of a man's authority. When he's living that way, if he's just living by a principle of honesty, then the nature of his authority is that principle of honesty that everybody recognizes. It's a beneficial thing, honesty. And so his personal authority is predicated upon that principle, but at the same time his practice of that principle. So a woman, a wife who is attached with that brother, recognizes that principle that he practices and recognizes his practice of it being genuine, and therefore recognizes his authority. And it's his personal authority because it's how he practices it, but it's a greater authority and because it's a greater principle than himself. So she recognizes that truth within honesty. And so she obeys within that, practices honesty herself, and abides within his practice of authority. She attaches and she's loyal to his personal practice. And the two things are abiding and obeying. I mean, the words can be used in a lot of different ways, but here what we're talking about is abiding means that like the abode. That's how we're describing abiding. It's a little bit of a stretch of the definition, but abiding within is like she finds her sanctuary, she finds her strength, she finds her security, and living within that principle that he is sharing, his authority, his practice of that principle, his reputation, his standing, the trust that people have within him because they know how he practices. She attaches herself, she invests herself, she is loyal to his reputation in addition because she shares in that, and she shares in that security and that reputation as well. So she abides within his authority of a greater principle and a greater purpose. And in addition to abiding within it, getting benefits from it, getting fed, security, housing, respect and support from the community, and additionally she's abiding within his authority. And she is obeying within that authority. She's recognizing, okay, yeah, there's truth to this. It's beneficial to do this. So she's practicing it in a similar way. And it's not obeying him saying, oh, da-da-da-da-da. It's obeying that principle of truth. And she can still disagree. She can argue with him. But it's in that context of that principle. And obviously there are a lot of other principles as well. But that's an example of what we're talking about. So point for this is this, that when a woman is committed to a man as wife, as husband and wife, that she is attaching herself to his authority. And that's the nature of her loyalty. It's obeying the principle, the universal principle that any other man who's on that same thing is doing too. But it's also exclusive loyalty to his authority, his reputation, his standing, his practice. So she finds comfort, she finds security, she finds sanctuary within his authority and his practice. And she's exclusive to that, loyal. And again, just like the man being physically loyal to woman being mentally loyal to her husband by abiding within his authority. When he says something, she listens to him. When another man says something, no, she listens to her husband. And that's the same thing as a man touching another woman. A man doesn't go out touching a lot of women. And reciprocally, a woman doesn't go out and just listen to and does whatever any other man says. And not even just obeying what any other man says, but even just finding trust and saying, oh yeah, he sound nice. Or, oh, not even that. She's focusing, because that's her adultery. That's her form of cheating. If a singer, and this is the thing when we talk about music and media, when there's a singer going on singing, ooh, baby, 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 and she's listening to that, she's cheating. That's adultery right there. Serious, mental. She's giving up her loyalty, because think about it. Think about it. All these references I'm doing, we have to be careful about this, because that's what we're talking about. And that's the challenge when we're raised in this, and we have that nostalgia and emotional attachment to these joints. But when we think about it, when we see, when a man sees, if a boy sees his mother googly-eyed at a singer on stage or whatever who's not his father, that's betrayal. That's like, wait a minute, dad's right over here. What you doing with what that? And that causes insecurity within the children and confusion and da-da-da-da, because that's what we're talking about. So, and she doesn't have to touch anybody. She doesn't, no physical activity, but she's given herself mentally. And when a woman does it, and again, a woman has mental strength over a man. And so that undermines her husband's authority. And that undermines the security and stability of the house itself. So again, that's the benefit of and the nature of the loyalty a woman has with her husband. Beyond just the physical, it's the mental and the man's authority. So now, while we say all that, remember that's the preface. We have yet to get to the point here, which is democracy and institutions are feminist expressions of polygyny. What that means? Now you see a little bit further. Democracy is a methodology of sharing authority. Wada. Institutions are a very practical, pragmatic, immediate way of sharing authority. And in that process, those are two distinct things. They're very much related, but they're two distinct things. Democracy is when a man, particularly a man, volitionally, proactively relinquishes his earthly authority for the sake of political cohesion and cooperation with other men, and agrees to submit himself politically, at least, to whoever is selected within that process to be the official leader. And when he does that, he subjugates his personal authority to the authority of another man. And in doing that, when any wife he has, the man himself, is subjugating her loyalty to his authority to the authority of whatever man is being selected. And when a woman abides by that authority of a man, relinquishing his own authority, and thus abides and obeys within the authority of another man, because that's the nature of the political compact, she's cheating. She is experiencing, committing, expressing loyalty to another man, giving her attention and investment of mental strength to another man. Even when the husband is saying that's what we do. No, I mean, that's the consequence. So there's no physical interaction, no sexual intimacies. The woman is only having sex and physical intimacy with her husband, but she has given herself mentally to another man. And again, recognizing that for a woman, particularly, that's sex. That is sex. That is that bond. So, and that's where the polygyny emerges, because she is giving herself and she is abiding within the authority of other men. Democracy. That's the nature. That's facts. It's psychological, abstract facts, but that's what it is. And then institutions are similar, whether institutions are democratic or otherwise. When a man is abiding within the authority of institutions, however the institutions are established and structured and bylaws and everything else like that. But when the institutions are issuing out paychecks, and that's where people are experiencing that sense of support and like putting food on the table, and additionally, and a woman is receiving that from an institution, aside from her husband, again, she's giving herself mentally, because then her loyalties and her sense of security, and additionally, exists outside of just the relationship between her and her husband, or even in the cohesive relationship between her and her husband and anything else. It's her in that other institution, and that undermines the authority of the man, and that undermines the strength of the house. So that's what we're talking about, Jeremy. I mean, maybe not didn't get too specific and detailed in connecting the dots for institutions, but it's a similar concept or whatever. Just understanding anything else outside the house doesn't have to be sexual. It has that consequence concerning the nature of authority and security and stability. All right. What's that? I gotta remember the three things. I know that one of them is about mommies, mothers, more sacred, sacred, sacred. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm trying to think what the third joint was, because I know it kind of goes back to the first joint. So I'm trying to figure out if I already went to that. No notes, obviously. It's 3 a.m. What do you want? Agua. Alright. Well, I'm just going to go into the second joint without trying to labor too much and remembering what the third joint is, and if I've already shared that. As I say that, still working on it. Well, let's go. Alright, so the second joint, I talk about kind of mixed son find sanctuary within his earthly more. The nature, the primal nature of his earthly more, particularly when his earthly more is of a different ethnic. She can't be of a different ethnic heritage. She's his mother. When he is of a different ethnic heritage than his mother, that's particularly what we're talking about. So when a son, and again, we're gonna try to work off this Oedipus Freudian thing and just talk about it in a general phenomenal kind of sense. When a son is born from a mother, from a Moor, and that son is the the product, the seed of a far who has a different earthly nature than the Moor. Then when they come from different parts of the world, different heritages, different ethnicities, languages, religions, or otherwise. The son receives and is a continuation of everything the Moor is, and so that's there. It's that's what it is. And at the same time, he's also receives and is a continuation of everything the far is. And when the far is something that's very different from the Moor, then there's a lot of reconciliation required. Some reconciliation required. That's hilarious, actually. Alright. I don't even know if, like, children would get that these days. If that reference is actually even contemporary. Anyways, there's some reconciliation required in a very primordial sense, because, and particularly when there's any type of like separation between the husband and the wife, between the far and the Moor, because that earthly nature that the son is a continuation of, that the Moor abstains from directly, immediately sharing in. I mean, she's one flesh with her husband, but in terms of having proclivities, liking it hot or cold, or wet, dry, high, low, or otherwise, because that's her primal nature, instinctive, like not even language, just like this is how we do it, habits, and just affinities, what just is home for her can often be different for the son. And how does the son find sanctuary when his Moor isn't comfortable with the climate that he's comfortable with, the food that he's comfortable with, and additionally, hudi, and you can't fake it. Like she can adopt it, she can love it genuinely, but at the same time, like there's always that recognition. But that's not where she's from. She might love her husband and be loyal to for life to her husband, but they're still in the back of mind. They're like, but yeah, but that's, I mean, you're doing that for your husband though. That's not where you're from. Like when your parents don't do that. So how does a son like find that sense of like sanctuary and just like the sublime within earthly Moor? We can say this to earthly far too, but particularly with earthly Moor, because we know the relationship between child and mother. So it is beyond question, but at the same time, it's like, yo, how that is? How does the son find that sanctuary within earthly Moor, when the son has a different nature than the earthly Moor? Primordial, instinctive, no faking, no cap. How does that happen? Transcendence. That's what we figure. Like, I won't say it's the only way, but that's basically what we say. Like, we're always in this life, we're always going to be these material things, and we're always going to have these proclivities. Ain't no faking it. We can adjust and we can acclimate in additionally, but we are who we are primally, but we are who we are also primordially, beyond the elements, the transcendent nature, energy itself, beyond hot and cold. And that's how we find that sanctuary with our forebears, with our parents, mother and far, more and far, and ancestors, and additionally, in this transcendental existence, continually, thoroughly, genuinely, intentionally, traditionally, collectively, celebrationally, ritually, regularly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, li. The transcendent nature. And that's part of that empathy that we talk about when being mixed, being able to relate with others, because we have to continually be mindful of that, of our transcendent selves, one way or the other, even when we haven't even learned about transcendentalism, existentialism, everything. We ain't never heard of Kant. I don't even know the meaning of Kant. I do be careful about pronunciation there. Or Emerson or Thoreau, and that's just recent joints. We can talk about Socrates, and then further into the religiosities and the Dawaties. Dawaties, wow. We're talking about Tao with that one. Let's be careful about the jokey with the words. So, all right. Anyways, we have to have this intuitive transcendence beyond the physical, beyond the elemental, as even just the basic experience of relationship, and recognizing just to just have some semblance of reconciliation with who we are, what we're doing in this life. And when we do that, then we have that antenna and whatever towards others. Now, sometimes we can dull it, we can pretend away, we can assimilate away, or whatever else from that, and just immerse ourselves within whatever the ignorances of wherever we are living. And so sometimes we need to do that, just because transcendence can be heavy. How about that? So, but at the same time, like when it's quiet, the candle's lit, there's no hiding, and that's how we find solution is in the next levels. Now the thing about it is that other people can avoid the next levels and just continue within the blinders of the earthly, and feel a sense of security and sanctuary and whatever else by just being surrounded by people who share the same nature. Don't question the relationship with parents, because parents generally share the same nature. If there's any slight variance, well, that's that eccentricity. We're just going to have to tolerate that or whatever else and work our way through. But by and large, don't have to deal with transcendence too tough. And so when mixed people come around and start talking about that, here we go. So anyways, I mean, that's basically the answer that we're talking about, is transcendence. And we still have to navigate through these roads of creation, through the elements, the hot and the cold, the light and the dark. But when we recognize that how and why and how we find sanctuary, is that what we say? How and why? How and where? Whatever. How we find sanctuary with who we are, where we're from, with our parents, with our more respectively, with our far respectively. That helps us, that strengthens us, that supports us, that guides us within our daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. In a tangible, practical, genuine way. There's always challenges, there's always new things to reconcile and work out and everything else like that, but the further we continue doing it, the further experience we get, further confidence, and additionally, so teach, share, and continue learning. Humble. Um, Now that's not it, because I also said not just mixed people, but multicultural. What about the multicultural brethren? Similar thing. Even when brethren are coming from a very homogenous experience, and so parents same phenotype, um, Nubian since the beginning and to this day, or Aryan since the beginning to this day. Even in those conditions, today in world civilization, um, the the pervading norm is multiculturalism, meaning that there's knowledge, there's dependence, there's technology, there's basic necessities that are gleaned from other cultures, and a peace and a respect and a dependency on other cultures, other knowledges, other religiosities, and otherwise. So, everyone who's in world civilization, everyone who's part of the world imperialist system itself, is intrinsically multicultural, is necessarily multicultural. Point blank, 100% facts. And in that recognition, in that experience, in those facts, even when a person is born from the same exact phenotype of the parents, same ethnicity, same religion, same language, and otherwise, because everyone is multicultural, and everyone, whether people like it or not, depend upon the truth and the validity of multiple religions and multiple cultures, the technology, the weaponry, the agriculture, the communications, all of it is dependent upon mathematics, knowledge, beliefs, rituals, proclamations, scriptures of multiple regions, from India, China, Arabia, Israel, Africa, Europe, native lands, and further. Everyone is dependent upon this. And even when kinfolk are raising hell and saying, annihilation and kill everybody from there and enslave everybody from there and everything, the truth of it is that everyone is dependent upon that. And there's no undoing that. That's the nature of the imperialist system. And that is existential angst, even for the homogenous. And that translates all the way down to the relationship between son and mother. Why? Because, particularly when a son is of a young age and increasingly innocent to the ways of the world, and is just observing this truth, knowing this truth inherently just by living, all that baby food and everything else, the glass jars, the methodologies of operational distribution, just for the baby to turn into a toddler. International economics and mathematics and religiosity. And the child intrinsically, inherently, instinctively knows that and loves that, because that's what brings the child life. And the child learns the intolerances. I mean, there's an intrinsic primordial intolerance to others as well, and that's the angst as well, because that's the nature. Oh, we don't like it hot. Oh, we don't like it cold. We don't like it wet. We don't like it dry. That's the child too. So every child, not just the mixed heritage, every child in imperialism is experiencing that existential angst, conflict, and the need of reconciliation. And how that translates in a significant way in terms of the relationship between a son and a Moor, or a child and a Moor, is that even when there's a strong continuity of primal nature between the son and Moor, she shares the same nature, the same life, same intuition, and additionally, same language. Everything is the same. No question about it. No question of the far is strength between a husband and wife, mother and father is strong. In addition, there ain't no question about it. Hallelujah. Alhamdulillah, Baruch Hashem, Jayo, Madok, Shishu. That's strong. However, as strong as it can be, there is still the contradictions between the nature of that home and the nature of all the other homes of multiculturalism, of imperialism that support the home. The utilities, the bricks and mortar, the windows, electricity, water, and otherwise. The mathematics and the religiosities that support the home and that are different from the home. So that when the parents, and particularly when the more are saying, we love ourselves and she can say we don't get along with those. She could not say that. All right, let's focus on this. The angst that the son experiences and that multicultural experience is that eventually there's recognition of a contradiction. The short of it is, how does a multicultural son find sanctuary in his more homogeneous, more or otherwise? The short of it is, it's the same answer: transcendence. But why is it necessary for even just a homogeneous son who's in a multicultural setting to experience that same transcendence that a mixed heritage son has to do? Why is it necessary? It pertains to the nature of the relationship that the Moor has with the other cultures of the world. And to be honest, the deception, the double standards, in one way or the other, that particularly Moor has. I mean, we can talk about the Far, but again, Afar very often and traditionally is recognized as being like if there's going to be any question of virtue or compassion or whatever, like we direct those kind of doubts or accusations to the Far, because we do our best to avoid any kind of question about the virtue and the kindness and everything of any Moor, of any mother. But the truth of it is that within world civilization, to exist within the constructs of convention, there are involvements within the atrocities. Every household is involved within the atrocities to one degree or another. And in that involvement, there is conflict. All right, I'm not going to harp on this. There's some difficulty at this point. I'm hitting somewhat of an obstacle or a wall in terms of concentration to articulate this succinctly and concisely amidst the coherence endeavored. So I'll just try to sum it up here. Basically, it's like parents do dirt. Parents do dirt. Whether it's direct and bloody or whether it's just like shade, parents do dirt. And children, at some point in the process of maturing, become aware of that. And how does a son continue to experience that sense of sanctuary, knowing parents and even the Moor is doing dirt, even by just turning a blind eye and just not recognizing the atrocities that are going on next door? How does the son find sanctuary when becoming aware of what parents do? And again, it's transcendence. There's a necessary reconciliation with suffering in life, whilst at the same time a guidance of continuing to strive to minimize suffering, to provide and to maximize healing and well-being, and devote ourselves in that process and in that balance. And when we do that, that people call that transcendence, people call it the middle path, awakening, enlightenment. And it's in doing that and in devoting ourselves to that, being mindful of that, that we experience that reconciliation with existence, with life itself, God, Tao, and our mothers. How about that? That's a book title. God, Tao, and our mothers. Continually. Not expecting perfection, not expecting some absolute heavenly oasis and utopia within our earthly mores. But at the same time, recognizing the transcendent nature of our earthly mores. And in that transcendent nature, wara, garden, respect, inamaka. Hallelujah. Alhamdulillah. Baruch Hashem. Shishe Bedo. Jai Om. That's the solution. Daily. We need reminders. We need encouragements. We need guidance. We need support. We need help. There's something further in there, but it's late, it's early, whatever it is. And we got things to do still. So, and maybe we can wrap this up before seeing red and blue flashes. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Sometimes, like I said, I've said this for years. I say things like in a light heart that are like, tenacious things, and it's the nature of the humor. It's maybe a little bit of a grim humor. It's a little bit of the perhaps hot-blooded humor, however you want to contextualize it within, but it's a way of embracing the challenge. It's a way of embracing like the difficulty and the pain, and be like, yo, bump it, and just continuing through. So sometimes if we do what we ourselves are experiencing respectively, individually, people are like, okay, yeah, he's on his own thing. How you argue with that? But when we start speaking about that in ways that, or when we start doing it about things that other people are experiencing, we personally might have that respectively. We personally, respectively, might feel comfortable, whatever, in that kind of seemingly flippantness. However, like somebody else is going through the same thing right now and is not trying to joke about it. So we have to be mindful of that. And the thing, it can seem immodest of just like, the sense of invincibility or whatever, and that's not what it is, necessarily. It's not what it is. It's just a matter of being like, bring it, kind of sort of thing. And at the same time, Amr Allah. Everything is in the hands of Allah. Everything is in the hands of Creator. So, who am I to be ego or not ego? Just whatever. All right. So we said politics. I'm trying to think of that third thing. I think I might have already said the third thing. It's not even an hour yet. Whoa, what's going on? Lighting. What happened here? Lightage. Now you know what that was. Might we finish this within an hour? Here we go. Flow on and on. Politics. Oh, okay. Yeah, we did say this before. This is something that was on the thoughts, on the agenda, on the unwritten notes. But it wasn't said, so now we say it now. I'm trying to think if there's anything else before I'm saying this. I would just say it. We're talking about the recent elections. Again, for the record, we've never voted. Not citizens. don't care too much one way or the other. I don't mean to sound disrespectful. It's just we deal with things as things are. Um, we see a one world imperialist system. The nations are puppets. It's not even like the presidents being puppets at this point. The nations are puppets. And that sounds very flippant. And we're doing all this verbosity before getting to the point. Just feeling some kind of need of like just making. Why are we talking about politics? Basically, is what this is to before we actually say it, because we're not. In one hand, it's like a matter of like speaking about what others are experiencing at the moment, but at the same time, it's like, yo, why are we even talking about this? It's not. We ain't got better things to talk about. Constructive. How do we build a house? How do we build a village? How do we secure a municipality? How do we prepare for the winter? Where do we get our food from? Those are the questions. Those are the topics of discussion. Where's your crew at? Where are the people? How do we solve our own beefs with each other in order to like actually live with each other? How do we give up our cars and like cooperative transportation? And then how are we gonna do this communication thing? Because I don't even know how computers work. And like, how do we get kinfolk off their screen things, and everything else like that? That's what we talk about. Presidents and elections and whatever. All right. So that being said, something for consideration is that in the selection, in the script of Trump being decided as the leader, the official or the official leader, doing it again. Is that recharging? That might be it. But okay, so interesting, because I did not change the lighting, and I optimized it just a second ago, and now it just automatically went down. How do they do that? Is it the charging situation? Whatever. Here's what we're saying. I think we took 5 minutes to get here. The selection of Trump as the leader of the United States at this moment, the leader of the theater of the United States, is actually an interesting, ironic opportunity or preparation for the dissolution of the United States. Again, not trying to be prophetic, but just observing, considering this one particular joint. I mean, there's a woeful need of very different methodologies of political organizing. Democracy is antiquated. Democracy ain't doing it. Billions of people are not governed effectively by just any particular potentate, even rotating, revolving door-wise either. There's a necessity of finding a methodology of sovereignty that is further micro and further immediate with the day-to-day experience of individuals, for there to be proficient meaning that motivates people in a healthy, productive, cohesive way. That's just the nature, that's the necessity of the world at the moment. It's not being done by 350 million populated nationhood. That's not doing it. So, it's not even a matter of like, protesting. It's not happening. That's not the nature. So it's manifesting itself one way or the other eventually. And it's a matter of, like, for those who are in positions to claim that authority, whatever, of finding that script to guide it optimally in that process of transformation. Because at the moment, at least in the recent few generations, to even question democracy is even worse than questioning the existence of God. You're talking about atheism. There's not even a word for a democracy. How about that? So that's how unthinkable it is to question at this moment in recent generations democracy itself. Because that's perceived as worse than heresy, worse than the Spanish Inquisition or whatever else. That's just, it's beyond crazy. It's dangerous. So Oh wait, that was what we were supposed to say at the beginning. Crazy, genius, and beautiful. What's the difference between crazy, genius, and beautiful? The difference is in the eye of the beholder, n'est-ce pas? Anyways, who said that? Descartes? Anyways. So what the world needs now is genuine organization. I haven't heard that song yet, but maybe somebody can do something. Anyways, what the world needs now is genuine political organization and effective articulation of such. Because there's just too little love, something like that. Anyways, make it further little love. Anyway, that's what the world needs now. And the ones that hold those positions of leadership and responsibility and who people are depending upon for that type of leadership need to find the script that guides the collectives in a proficient way into that experience of political organization and sovereignty in an increasingly micro way. Because without that, then there's what is being experienced right now, which is increasing chaos and distrust, malaise, and all the pollution. So that unseats the kinfolk in those positions of authority, just naturally, intrinsically. So there's motivation for that. But that's how difficult it is, because even when the leadership, and when I say leadership, I'm talking about the politicians, when the leadership genuinely wants and is striving to not even find the solutions, but to implement the solutions, the resistance is actually the people themselves being greedy and trying to get as much as possible with what is known. And so that's the thing. It takes education. It takes like answering the practical needs of people at the moment. And again, the leadership, the genuine leadership that facilitates this transformational process are the police and teachers, plain and simple. Police and teachers. That's who does it. Leadership has the knowledge. Leadership has the mechanisms and everything else, but it doesn't have the trust, doesn't have the relationship, and otherwise. And so it's a matter, I guess, of leadership learning how to support police and teachers in the leadership role of police and teachers being the leaders of communities. And even in that scenario, it's not necessarily the police and teachers being the authorities of the communities, but being the leadership of that transformational process. And leaders of communities being attached and connected in relationship with the police and teachers. But it's the police and teachers, because the police and teachers are further in touch with the experience of everyday people, at the same time having a knowledge and education and training to be leadership, and also the critical services that are necessary within a community, such that the leadership in terms of strategy and financial methodologies and planning and all these other things, those who have that type of knowledge, who are typically considered or perceived or put in leadership positions, aren't the leadership of the transformational process. Each one, each entity, each micro collective, municipality and otherwise, configures its methodology of existence and trade and everything else with others, but continually needs to rely upon the police and teachers to be the connecting authority and connecting entity with the other collectives that are doing the same thing. So anyways, that's just some of the sketch of the blueprints, or like an outline of the blueprints, and we call it In that process, we say, what we got to say now? The green sprouts amidst the blueprints. How about that? The green sprouts amidst the blueprints. I'm getting that. Say it again. Situation. Green sprouts amidst blueprints. What that mean? All these strategies that all these collectives have to get their position on how things are developing, progressing, manifesting. In each and every of these strategies and plots and plans and everything else, there is a significant necessity of green, garden, nature, natural life. So whatever the blueprints are, there must be green sprouts. Nature reserves for natural people and natural people, both. There is that necessity within all the blueprints. Nativity, indigenousness, necessity. Every blueprint. So, all that being said, what we just saying is that when we look at the selections, the options between Kamala Harris and Trump, there's a consideration that Trump is actually the further plausible, even, we're not playing favorites here, we don't care one way or the other, but just in terms of looking at the theater, Trump is in a further, and when I'm saying Trump, I'm saying like the producers who cast Trump. It's all instead of Kamala Harris. There's the consideration in that process. The selection of Trump positions the United States in a further favorable way in many ways for the transition of dissolution, the dissolving of the United States into the evolved political methodology of organizing and sovereignty that is increasingly micro level, because Trump has further trust amongst the kinfolk who are increasingly prone towards rebelliousness, violent rebelliousness, and reactionaryism, such that if it's a Kamala Harris regime in theater that initiates a formally, like it starts to announce, well, we're going to have these hearings about how we're going to break up this union, and additionally, up in arms reactionaryism, because it's just a very primal reaction of she's already different. Here it is, the world's trying to take over and everything else like that. She's not one of us, and now she's trying to do this. And it's all she when it's actually regime, and it's the same script writers, it's the same studio, it's the same theater. But in people's perceptions and conditioning, it's like, oh, this is the enemy, this is the foreigner. And so the announcement coming from a foreigner is just like, they're coming for us, reactionaryism. But when it's done by somebody who is those immigrants and this, that, and the other, and then says, well, we're going to have to do this, and frames it in a way that's increasingly attuned to the rhetoric and the propaganda that reactionaries are further at home with, then it's a matter of like, well, if so-and-so says it, like it must be. So there's less of that propensity. It's not necessarily a given or a non-given. There's always the prospect, I'll say, of reactionaryism to a Trump announcing the dissolution, the formal dissolution of the United States. Can't even say it without a hiccup. There can be anticipated less reactionaryism, and that's not shade on kinfolk, the militias and otherwise. but that's understanding the nature of it, and even negotiating, um, making arrangements and preparations, because in many ways, that's exactly what militias want. The libertarians don't want government. So okay, then why do you want control of the United States as a whole? Like, run your county, and you got crews in different counties. Run your counties, form your governments. Why are you trying to control everything? You want separation between the races? Okay, how do you think you're going to do it? So there it is. And framing in that way, that's non-threatening. That is just very plain and plain spoken, honest, blunt, and further trusted. Like, we know what he's thinking. We know what we know. Da 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 da. So, and it kind of means that's what Trump is thinking, because Trump is not running the show. So anyway, but at the same time, it's a voice, and that's what a lot of people listen to. It's what a lot of people are accustomed to listening to, and that's what people's sense of safety and just like pretenses, established pretenses. Kind of interesting, that established pretenses. Anyway, that's what we got to share this moment. So, have we covered the bases? The bases, such an American phrase. That's almost hilarious. I won't say it's almost hilarious. That's funny. Why? Bases is a sporting phrase, and it's a sporting phrase that is rather unique and exclusive to the United States. Baseball, literally. What other sports? Not even cricket has bases, to my knowledge. It's wickets. Maybe there are bases in cricket. I'm uncertain. My knowledge is comparatively modest. Bases, running the bases, covering the bases. That's a sporting term within baseball. So that's a very uniquely American thing, and maybe played in Havana, La Habana, and some other places as well. But it's an American thing, and that's imperialism. And that's the other part of it, what makes it almost funny, which is bases, American bases, military bases, covering the bases, blah, blah. But then we can talk about just the basics. Base in terms of primordial, heathen type joints, but then also basis and foundation. That's the nature of homonyms and the English language. The agua. Oh, look at that. Wonder where that went. Let's not be too much. Can we see the firelight? Can we see the firelight? Can we see the firelight? The firelight. The firelight. That's just contrivance. 4 a.m. We don't have to keep on talking. We've gone over an hour. That's enough. Hallelujah. All thanks and praise to the Most High. How about we conclude by just simply saying a blessing of the water that we just partake of, that helps cleanse our system. Do I show? Do I have? Do I need? Oh, yeah, it's unnecessary. I was just going to show the empty bag of potato chips and corn chips. I was doing decent. This is what we started getting at the market. You might notice that this is how it has to be consumed. But it's broccoli. Broccoli by itself is fantastic. And I'm recently informed that fan is actually a curse word in my matrilineal clan language. Squash it. That is the recharging thing. Aren't you glad I let you know? Don't. This guy is automatically changes the light situation every time. Every time. With water. So, anyways, that looks so healthy because it has yet to be consumed. It might be difficult to discern, but this is actually pho. That's how the day began, or that's how the evening began in terms of the intention of consumption. And then, after feeling somewhat decent and having cash on hand, the shopping process changed somewhat to adding some teens. And those some teens was the said items of potato chips and corn chips, and that's what actually got consumed. How about that? In this woody. So I'm giving advertisements now. We're not even endorsed. And that was the trigger. That was like how we say, the gateway food, bread. Now this is whole wheat bread, I think. Or it says, I won't say the name of it, but whole grains, which is why we get it. It's not even vegan, which is challenging. It actually provides flatulence, I think, because of the dairy. Whole wheat flour, yeah, all right. Enriched wheat flour. I don't know too much about that, how that compares with enriched white flour. It doesn't sound the most beneficial. The last ingredient is whey. That would be milk. So it's not vegan. A violation of the vegan code here. Because it's healthier than the white bread food that is vegan or comparatively vegan. So, like this is the challenge. We do the non-vegan thing that's probably healthier, or the vegan thing that's less healthy, and this is very expensive too. Gone. That's what it is. We eat like cows sometimes, bears. We give thanks, and in giving thanks, we are given guidance. In giving thanks, we are given guidance. To be healthier. How do I say that? I'm gaining weight, talking about my clothes shrinking and everything else like this at this moment. We are in an unfavorable mode at the moment. Recording in the middle of the night again. We are amidst kinfolk who are being examined at this moment and feeling the stresses of that. And so we are experiencing the stresses of that because this is the nature of our symbioticness. What we're going to do by the grace of the Most High is give thanks. So, that being said, Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Allah Wabha, Dao Ke Dao Fei Qiang Dao, Ming Ke Ming Fei Qiang Ming, Jah Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cielo, sanctificita nomen tuum, Vaheguru Sanam. Baruch atah Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lachem min eretz. Baruch atah Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehekol nihya b'divaro. Amen. Kyrie eleison, silvamas tu savarigata he sabe sata babantu sukitata. Fagabiem. Aquaba upendo na amanem, fikiri neselami, chinte dan per me, libov me womejaka. Ubuntu shabono fikitka. Sheshe. Kambasanida, Domo Arigato, Pilama Yellow Walk on Taka Dokushin Green, Go Milligan. God, we thank you for always that you bless us. Ata Jamia Yata Afaname. Madu, Ahu, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Blessed love and peace.